With the release and success of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, many viewers were introduced to Miles Morales, aka the successor of Peter Parker, in the 1610 Marvel Universe, aka Ultimate Marvel Universe. And for some, this was the first exposure to Miles Morales, while for others, it wasn't. And Miles Morales was created by writer Brian Michael Bendis and artist Sarah Pichelli in late 2011, as Ultimate Peter Parker was given a death at the hands of Ultimate Green Goblin. In interviews, Bendis claimed he had a heavy inspiration for Miles when he saw Donald Glover in a Spider-Man outfit during an episode of NBC's Community, which at the time was a joke based upon the whole Donald for Spider-Man campaign, which went on when Andrew Garfield ended up becoming the Spider-Man. Now, since his introduction, Miles has appeared in TV shows, video games, various comic titles, and now is the lead character of a major film, which is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Miles' history is originally based upon the Ultimate 1610 Marvel Universe history until Spider-Man Annual Number 1, which came out in August 2018. Now, this issue featured a new history for Miles Morales, fully integrating him into the 616 Prime Universe timeline. Now, this is a very huge important change because it ignores things that happened previously in Bendis' run. Basically, this new origin makes it as such that he is native to the 616 universe, even though publication-wise, he is still from the Ultimate Universe. The way this new origin goes, which is why one of the reasons of making this video is because there's a new origin for the character. Miles Gonzalo Morales, which is his full name, is the son of Jefferson Davis, a police officer and ex-SHIELD agent, and his mother Rio Morales works as a nurse. In living in Brooklyn, New York, Miles was selected by a lottery to attend Brooklyn Vision's Academy, which is also seen in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And during Miles' junior year of high school, his uncle Aaron, secretly a supervillain called the Prowler at the time, stole a genetically modified spider. This spider bit Miles, giving him various spider-based abilities similar to the other Spider-Man Peter Parker. Initially, Miles tried keeping his powers secret and didn't publicly use them until the events of Marvel's Secret Invasion. And while Miles was at a pop-up store called Hypeware with his friends, a Skrull ship appeared, crashing into the store, followed upon by a Skrull soldier who is posing as a New York police officer. When the Skrulls appear, Miles takes some clothes from the store to hide his identity, as his friend Gank convinces him to help stop the Skrulls. And eventually, after fighting this Skrull posing as a police officer, another Skrull appears, actually posing as Peter Parker's Spider-Man, which ends up overwhelming Miles for a bit until he sees Thor destroying a ship overhead, which kind of gives him some confidence in taking on the Skrull imposter. And Miles then fights one-on-one with the Skrull imposter, defeating him, but unfortunately one of his friends, Brent, dies, and feeling guilty he didn't do enough to save Brent, Miles decides to use his abilities proactively, eventually landing him under the mentorship of Peter Parker, aka the traditional mainstream Spider-Man of almost every multiverse universe there is in the Marvel canon. Now, this origin differs from Miles' original history, as he no longer has the inspiration of a dying Peter Parker from his universe, or the death of his Uncle Aaron to help serve as kind of that Uncle Ben moment. The reason why they did these changes, they don't really say, and you could argue they did this simply not because of a power move against Bendis, but simply because they just wanted to ignore the Ultimate Universe and properly integrate Miles in the Prime 616 universe. Getting onto his abilities, similar to Peter Parker, Miles Morales has various superhuman abilities inspired by the characteristics and traits of a spider. These include superhuman strength, speed, durability, reflexes, agility, senses, and also clinging to surfaces. His strength allows him to lift over 10 tons, while his enhanced senses include things such as spider sense, which warns him of danger in a precognitive manner. Now, in the Ultimate Universe, especially early on in his books, Miles had a lot more enhanced versions of his spider sense that would come about, almost similar to the character Silk, which was introduced during the original Sin event in Marvel Comics a few years back before the original Spider-Verse. In these moments, Miles actually had precognitive dreams warning him of things in advance, either like a day in advance, a few days in advance, but definitely a lot more powerful as a spider sense than Peter Parker traditionally has had. In addition to these abilities, Miles can also blend in with his surroundings, similar to invisibility, but they never call it invisibility, instead they call it camouflage, which technically is a different thing, but it's used in almost practically the same way. At the same time, Miles can also release bioelectrical energy blasts in various ways. The most common and initial way he does this is in the form of what he calls venom blasts, which comes from direct contact with a surface surface or a person, and he kind of just releases the energy as a tactile burst. It's not as dramatic as they show it in Into the Spider-Verse, where Kingpin goes flying across the room basically, or across, it looked like a skyscraper, but everything was kind of warped in that scene. It's not extreme like that, but more so like a paralyzing effect. Usually it knocks the person out, the target out, and it was very much considered a deus ex machina of sorts when Miles first started using it, because what would happen is he wouldn't defeat the foe, and because he couldn't defeat the foe, whether because he was too new at being a hero, not skilled enough, things like that, he would just use the Venom Blast. But further on, as things continued to develop, Bendis introduced a more advanced version of this, which is more so an omnidirectional energy burst from his whole body. So kind of things similar to how Superman in New 52 at one point, and technically he still has this, but they just don't focus on it as much, but he had kind of a solar flare ability. It's very similar to that. Miles is very weak after using it for about like a day or so. It kind of operates in the same general aesthetic principle of energy just exploding from the user's body. Before Bendis left the Spider-Man books, he also gave Miles the ability to generate his threads and web silk, I guess you could call it, from his hands organically in a way that was very similar to also the character Silk. However, they kind of combined this with his energy abilities and said pretty much it was a further extension of his bioelectrical energy manipulation. So pretty much instead of him producing his own silk, he was using energy threads, and this could also transfer his Venom Blast to whatever is touching the different energy threads. Since that's happened, and since Bendis left the book, that hasn't really come up again. Now, to get to some depictions of note, the original 616 Miles was introduced in the 2017 event called Spider-Man. At the end of it, Peter Parker looks up Miles Morales on Google basically, and is shocked to see what he finds. And we don't learn what he actually finds out until Spider-Man 2, which comes out later. And in Spider-Man 2, we find out that the 616 Miles Morales is involved in the criminal underground and actually is an old friend of Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin. And after helping the Kingpin in other multiple crime operations, he decides to retire from the criminal world, and Kingpin helps him. He pretty much erases him from the records, does everything a good friend would do that has the connections and the power and influence that Kingpin has. And pretty much he decides that he wants to retire from the criminal underground and simply live and have a happy life with his girlfriend, Barbara Sanchez. However, Barbara dies shortly afterwards. From this point on, Miles' goal is to visit another universe with the Barbara that he can be with, which he ends up accomplishing when, at the end of Spider-Man 2, he gets transported to a recreated Ultimate Universe. So this is post-Secret Wars and all that stuff, so the multiverse is being remade by Reed Richards and his family, and that's a different kind of storyline if you guys are interested in that. The other kind of depiction of note is from Into the Spider-Verse. So Miles Morales, in that 2018 movie that recently came out as of recording this, we're introduced to an animated version of Miles in a universe that is based on the Ultimate Universe, but not 100% the Ultimate Universe. There's a lot of differences. Some people are confused by that because of a certain scene in the beginning of the film that shows different universes with different kind of distinctions, and people were like, oh, that's Earth 616, that's Earth 1610, this and that. And that's more of a nod than something to take literally. Literally, it's not the 616 Peter Parker, just like how Miles Morales in this universe and that Peter Parker was not the 1610 Peter Parker in so many different ways. But this version of Miles is very similar to the original version Bendis wrote, except for his spider is from Alchemax, and he learns to be Spider-Man thanks to the events of the movie featuring various spider people from different universes. And Miles Morales is voiced in this movie by actor Shameik Moore, who has credits for the movie Dope, which was really good, and also the Netflix original series The Get Down. So that's it for this Origins episode of Miles Morales. Let us know what you guys think down in the description below, comment below, and come back next week for Mysterio.